and welcome to Masked Monologues, the anonymous podcast for creators. I'm your host, AKAGIRL, and today I have with me a special guest, Brad Helm. We are going to be discussing the making of musical Mavericks. In other words, why some musicians make it in the industry and others don't. So without further ado, I'm going to open up the mic to Brad. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you started out as a musician and what inspires you?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. How I started out as a musician, 49 years old, so it's been quite some time. I grew up in a family of four, and the rule was we had to take to grade 6 Royal Conservatory of Music. So I started piano at the age of 7 and studied it. And then by the time I got to grade 6 piano, we had that option of continuing on, which I did. So I continued on to grade 8 piano. My piano teacher dropped me actually at the time because I wasn't practicing. And I was in high school at the time, started playing in bands, realized I could play by ear. Had some people show me how to do that. Went to Grant MacEwan College in Edmonton, Alberta, before it was an accredited university, and got a diploma in jazz and rock performance. From there, I had a music studio. I taught 70 piano students per week and had a little bit of a sideline where I got into doing chemistry, of all things, education, worked for the RCMP in the forensic laboratory for almost 10 years. And then, long story short, after owning and operating a business, doing marketing, I got back into Grant MacEwan once they were an accredited university and have been working on my degree there.
So it seems as though you've had a pretty musical family and they factored into you pursuing this career. Would you say that there was a moment in your career that you felt as though this was for you? It wasn't necessarily the influence of your parents or your family, but that you wanted to go and create something for yourself?
Yeah, I was always fascinated by music. When I look back at photographs of memories I can't even remember, my parents have me sitting on the couch falling asleep, listening to music on headphones with a record player. And I remember moments that really changed my life forever. And that was having somebody show me the lead melody line of Take On Me by the band and how they figured that out by ear. And with a bit of music theory, I started realizing all of the patterns that were behind music. My parents were away from home a lot during those years. And so I had the house all to myself and no fear of being me. And just started exploring music theory. And I realized I can actually change my social status by learning all of these top tunes and playing them for friends from school. So that, and it sounds a little bit strange, but I had a music poster in my room that had all the scales on it. And I got looking at it one day and I saw the minor blues scale on there and I focused in on it and I was, what the heck is that? And so once I played it, it was like an, oh my God moment. And it just, all of those little tiny events and a piano teacher teaching me how to chord to melodies and how that worked. I was just off to the races and didn't stop.
I know. I find with music, once you understand patterns, you understand the sequences, you can go anywhere you want with it creatively. And it's like you learn all the rules just to forget them in the end. So that's
Absolutely.
completely relatable. I just want to ask or transition into questions about the music industry. So
Sure.
this episode is going to be focused on the competitive nature of the industry. And if you've noticed any qualities in musicians that are more successful compared to those who are not.
I think there is actually only one. And I'll just preface that a little bit by saying my experience in business, which is completely outside of the music industry and marketing, I've found that I'm very good at that. And understanding psychology and the psychology of how humans work has really given me an insight into what holds a musician back. And I believe very strongly, almost with certainty, that a musician knowing him or herself fully is the key. So for instance, we might think we've got to sit and practice scales or we've got to have the ultimate tune or whatever. If you're not connecting with your audience because you really are not secure in who you are as a person, that essentially you'll fall flat because the person has to ask themselves the question, what is music? And if I believe I could be wrong on this, but I saw it in a movie called Immortal Beloved, which is about Beethoven. And he asks one of his colleague friends what music is, and they tried to describe it as emotion and feeling. And he says, no, it's none of that. He says it's hypnosis. It's the ability for a musician to take this feeling, this person here, and bring their audience into that same feeling. So if you have a musician, for instance, that is thinking, you know what, I want to be famous or I want to do all of these great things, but has a shallow understanding of themselves and doesn't know how to fully be vulnerable with through music with their audience, whether it be a recorded audience or a live audience, they will fall flat because the audience will say, that was a great tune, but there's just that edge that's missing it. And I've run into a couple of musicians since that I've listened to them and I have flat out said, I can hear your soul. I can really feel it. And I know that those 2-3 musicians can make it. And I've heard other exceptional musicians that I've had discussions with them. I just want to be famous. And I listen to they've got great tunes and I'm like, you are never going to make, and that sounds harsh, but make it outside the community. And it's not a judgmental thing, but it's more along the lines of, I wish I could help them sort of look
their mentality.
Yes, look inside, because we all carry with us things that withhold us from being that vulnerable with the audience.
Limiting beliefs.
Yes. I think it's going to sound insane, but I think the greatest thing that a musician could do would be to actually have a full-blown psychologist to explore their past, to unleash them, to not be afraid fully for who they are.
Wow.
So we're not trying to pretend to copy this musician or copy that musician. Because if you look at all the genres, there's only one genre. For me, it's the genre of Brad. That's it. And so I need to somehow keep away trying to be like other people and just be me and my music.
Be uniquely yourself.
Yes. And the power of that, I think, is what unleashes the musician.
No, I just want to go back to what you said about how you can't replicate the human connection, emotion, and feeling. And I've noticed that nowadays we have AI technologies. We've got auto tune. We've got all these tools to help us work on our music and create a better product. But one of the things you cannot replicate is that feeling, that emotion. With a vocal, you can go in there, you can auto correct all the notes, but you cannot add feeling to a person's voice, right? You cannot replicate the soulfulness. Your soul shines through the music.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. And if you were to think of it in terms of even friendships, if you had a robot that was a friend, try and talk to Alexa or your iPhone, Siri, right? There is something that's just cold and is missing. And so as much as we have AI and auto-tune, it can never replace the humanity that really makes the connection. There is no computer that actually can figure that out. And even with tunes with autocorrect, if you listen to them and the ones that are good ones, you go, why is this a great tune? It's because you connect. There's something about it, even in the person's voice being auto-tuned and the way that it's written is, man, I am feeling this. They know me. In other words, they've hypnotized me into their world. And there's a togetherness in that and the humanity of it. And it is a beautiful thing. And if you can connect with one person like that, you can connect with millions like that.
Yes. So you're saying that you have a background in marketing. And I just wanted to know how much the marketing aspect of promoting your songs, of gaining an audience, gaining followers on social media platforms, and collaboration plays into becoming a successful musician. Because from what I've noticed at this point is it is a huge component of it. It definitely is a major factor. So I just wanted to hear your take on that.
It's incredible to me how much language matters. A misplaced word and the whole thing goes south. So I want to say that first and foremost. Now, if you think about it, relating marketing to going to a party, let's say you and I were to go to a party. You and I didn't know each other. And I see you across the room and I walk up to you and said, hi, my name is Brad. I've got all these qualifications. This is what I do. This is what I do. I've done this. I've done that. You'd be like, yeah, not connecting. Instead, what we need to do is talk about the other person. So if I'm interested in the connection with you, I need to present you as part of, I'm curious about you, your roles. When I have ever designed a website, not designed a website, but written a copy for it, I talk about the customer as the hero. And so as a musician, you're singing about their pain, you're saying, or their joy or their anger, right? You're saying, hey, I'm alongside with you in that. You're not singing about you. And that subtle shift of going between it all being about you and what you've done and all these credentials trying to prove yourself, which is a big ocean that everybody swims in, versus let me sing about you. Let me talk about your problems in business, whatever they are. And it sounds like almost like such a simplistic thing, but it is so incredibly powerful, right?
Yes.
You're their guide, in other words, in that journey. Yeah.
No, there's a lot of psychological studies and evidence to support that idea or thought. I've noticed that decisions are made in the limbic system of the brain. So you've got like the neocortex, which is associated with your facts, everything that is factual, your evidence, all those, oh, I'm this person, I've worked for this company, I've done this in the past. But then the decision is made where you connect with people. So where you can maybe tell a story about your music. Maybe you can tell a funny story about one of your past experiences. And that's just what you're trying to say right now. And I completely agree with it.
Yeah. For instance, there's been times when I've sat in my vehicle realizing that I'm not in myself in my right space. And I take a moment before getting out of my vehicle to go, Brad, look at other people and be present with them in their situation. So I might even be at the checkout at Costco and I'm going through and I'm looking at myself going, it's really hard to look at the cashier in her eyes. And it's like, why is that? It's because her eyes are stunning. So just speak out that truth. And I said, you have incredibly beautiful eyes. And she is shocked and her whole day improves because of that one comment of me being vulnerable in that, which other people are afraid to speak that truth. And in music, we need to do the same thing, is to be able to flow out who we are unabashedly. But again, that's why I'm saying it would be, not saying, I'm actually saying that there's a powerful thing to go with the psychologist to get rid of all the baggage that we're carrying from our years gone by that we don't even know that we're carrying. So we can unabashedly be ourselves in public and in music and share our joys and pains and sorrows and come together in a community.
No, it's so funny that you say that because that one truth that you might have been afraid to share if you weren't as open and confident in yourself, it gives someone else confidence and makes another person happy. And it just improved her day. So that was wonderful.
Yeah, it's not like we changed the world by going and yelling at the world. We change the world by changing ourselves and being ourselves. If you believe in a creator or the universe or whatever, you were designed to be a certain way that you are, but we're also afraid and we always hold back even just 5, 10%, whatever. And so that's why we're always slightly missing the mark. And I would ask the listeners, like, if you could unleash yourself 100% in all the beautiful human that you are and not afraid to be you, there are other people out there that are going to resonate with that and go, oh my God, this person is just like me. Check out their music and you guys go arm in arm together. And that person shares it with another and another, and it just spirals. To me, that's the key.
Yes, I was actually speaking to one of my friends. He's starting up a record label, and he was talking about how he's looking for artists with charisma who are bold, who are not afraid to put themselves out there and be exactly who they are, be authentic, because that's the only way that you can attract an audience. People see other people who want to succeed and who have direction. And if you can have that confidence within yourself to do that, you're already ahead of 90% of other people.
Exactly. And I'm somebody who really dislikes cliches, and please don't take this as against you, but
I know.
you'll hear that word confidence used a lot. But what is confidence? Where does that come from? Again, it comes from knowing yourself. Maybe you'll read something on Instagram, like this post, I really love it. You repost it. It all comes from knowing yourself and loving who you are. And that will bring about the confidence you can. You look at somebody like Lady Gaga, for instance, or God rest his soul, Prince, or any of the massive artists out there. They're not afraid to just be the creative selves that they are out there in the world. And how did they do for that? But we have a tendency to essentially lie to ourselves and think that we're okay and we've got it all together because we look at others and we think, hey, they've got it all together and I should be the same. There's something wrong with me. But when you stop and think about it, we're all the same. We all struggle. We all have I don't want to get up in the morning. And so if you go to somebody and find yourself, and again, go to a medical doctor, you have a general practitioner. I'm sure you do. You have a doctor. I
Yes.
have a doctor. So why don't we use doctors of the mind?
Mm-hmm.
No shame in that. In fact, it can be, I think, a musician's most powerful ally is to actually have a doctor of the mind, a psychologist, nothing against therapists, but a psychologist. It would be a very powerful tool in the musician's arsenal.
So now I just want to ask you a little bit more about the specifics of making a song. Do you usually start off with a melody or do you start off with lyrics or do you put a chord progression on your piano? What works for you and what have you noticed in other artists? Is there a right way or is there a way that will get you a better result?
I don't think that there is a right way or a wrong way. It's whatever works for you. And again, that sounds cliche. But the thing is, again, is you need to step outside of yourself and look at what you're doing. Are you thinking you have to do it this way because that's what somebody else does? Or are you genuinely seeking the way that works for you? So for myself, for instance, I'll be sitting down at a piano and I haven't touched it. And I'll say to myself, Brad, just play one note, just touch one note and let the instrument speak back to you. And so I hear that note and then I begin to follow it. I lose all sort of idea of what I'm trying to do per se. And that's the way I just create. There are other times I'll have my notepad on my phone where it's just write down your thoughts, your words, and just let that be. And then there can be a conjoining of that. So it's neither one box or another box. I'm just trying to completely dismantle that. I'm not even trying to dismantle that box. I'm just flowing is the right word to use.
I've noticed that a lot of singer-songwriters, they journal every day and they write down their thoughts. And sometimes that helps just to work through your emotions, the problems you've been facing in your day-to-day life. And I was wondering if do you do that yourself or are you more inclined to bring out the keyboard, start arranging your progressions, playing the notes?
For me, I don't journal, and everybody says that person should journal. But like you and I have had conversations in the past, we have different personality types. So for me, for instance, to tell you what you should and what would be good for you or what not is that, yeah, give it a try. Absolutely. It'd be, for instance, like me telling you about nutrition is, hey, this worked for me. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You're different than I am. So for me, for instance, how would I put this? There's a sort of, I have conversations with myself all the time. Like I have this whole universe based on my personality type in my head. It's almost like I've got this separation between myself and so my journaling is always this interconnecting of ideas and exploring up here. And I sit down at my instrument and I play. And one of the things is that in that I've been able to look back and say, hey, Brad, I look back at all the circumstances that have ever occurred to me in music and I evaluate them and all the hard ones and all the good ones. And I'm like, wait a minute, I start to see a pattern. It's like this person started crying when I played. This person started crying. This person said, your music is so beautiful. And I'm like, wait a minute. Have I been honest with myself in my music? And do I own it? It's a very funny question. No, you don't own it, Brad. This is something that was gifted to you by the universe. You need to put it out there. It is meant to be given to others. And so that's my journaling, I would say, in that respect, is a reflection backward and record keeping of everything that's occurred that way. But some people need to write it down. Others, like myself, don't need to, quote unquote.
So you say that you take in input and feedback whenever you play a song for someone. How much does this factor into what you'll create the next time? Do you create music just to appeal to your audience, or how would an artist go about that? Because if an artist has a song that's been doing amazingly well and has been getting hundreds and thousands of streams, and let's say that it's not the direction they want to go with their music and their art, should they still appeal to those fans, or should they be true and authentic to who they are? Or is there a middle ground?
I think they should be true and authentic to who they are, because I think one of the dangers that could happen is that being something that you're not and resonating with people, maybe you're BSing the system and you've done it so well and people are buying into it, but you're killing your soul at the same time. And where does that end? Does that end in drugs and suicide? Like so many musicians go down that road. And sure, maybe backing up and being yourself through music, and people go, oh my gosh, you might lose your whole community. And I don't know about you, but maybe you've had some life circumstances happen to you. You've had this revelation where you'll be like, wow, people have really been using me and I'm going to lose this entire group to find a new one. So I'm not sure if that's the conversation a musician needs to have with himself. What's really important to you, the fame, the money, all the likes, or for you just to be completely free and full of joy in creating your music and spreading that out into the world.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about the Canadian music industry. And
Yeah.
I've noticed that it's been incredibly difficult for an independent artist to make a living. And I'm not saying that you need all the likes, all the attention, all the Instagram followers, all the social media. But ideally, if you want your music to be your main job as opposed to a hobby or a side hustle, how can independent artists or musicians actually profit from the work they create and use those funds to help advance their art or create more music, build a community?
It's a very good question. So I think the answers that musicians would give, or maybe even a lay person would give, is just there's a box there of, and I've heard it many times when I was at McEwen, and students would say this musician made it because of who they knew, because of money, because of this. My dad taught me one thing very early on. He's a heavy duty mechanic. And he said to me, and it's always resounded with me, is Brad, you can solve any problem as long as you think about it long enough and hard enough. And it has held true for me ever since. As a musician, you're not just a musician. That's the error. You're also in marketing. You're also a business owner. You own you. So how do you take care of you? Have you listened to maybe some audiobooks on marketing? And it's not that you have to be good at, for instance, website design and all of that, but you should know how to find somebody that's good at website design. You should be able to know what good copy is for your website. And you should be able to study yourself and study the psychology of yourself. You are the actual business. And I think to look at it in terms of Canadian market versus US market, I've got a couple points on that. My question to listeners would be, do you own a phone? You've got the internet. There is no border. It doesn't matter if you're in Canada or the United States. I have met Canadian producers that have produced and worked with Aretha Franklin.
Uh-huh.
That's in Canada. So my question to them would be, how come you haven't found this producer that I have?
Yes.
There's something going on with you. Don't go out there and blame everybody else. As the business owner of you, you need to look at you and what you need to do better. Go and listen, get more knowledge, listen to an audiobook or read a book if that's what you're into. I don't have time for reading books. I'm always listening to audiobooks as I'm cleaning or whatever. And make yourself better all the time and gain knowledge. And you'll start to see these insights and present your music to the world.
Yes. So now that we're talking about how you have to be an entrepreneur as well as a musician, you have to have some background knowledge in marketing or find someone who's more experienced than you are, reach out to them, ask them to help you with your music, promoting it, etc. I wanted to talk about how failure, musicians constantly fear failure, I've noticed they're afraid even to start because maybe no one will stream their songs. Maybe no one will check out their music videos. And what do you have to say to musicians who are afraid and just have that fear? It's a psychological thing. So we've been talking about that previously.
I think one sort of maybe a preface to that is make sure you have a friend that's willing to call you on your BS and isn't going to tell you, "Oh yeah, that's really good, that's great, it's lovely." Just flat out say, "I don't like it." Okay, so that's one thing. You need a friend or friends like that support you because that is a good friend. And I think second to that, if one of the first business books that I listened to, and it's going to sound like maybe a spiritual book, but yeah, on the entrepreneurial podcast, they say it's a book that all entrepreneurs should listen to. So I did, and it's called Outwitting the Devil. It was written by somebody in the early 20th century. And it's a very strange book where this gentleman has a conversation with the devil and asks what he's about. And so the premise of the book, and the devil has to answer him honestly on everything. And it's, "Devil, what are you up to?" And the summary of the book, in a way, is I'm trying to keep everybody in this harmonic rhythm where they don't do anything in their life. They come home, they watch TV, Netflix, whatever, they play their computer games, do a little music on the side, whatever, but they don't achieve that exceptionalness that they actually are. I don't want that. And so in that, the lesson was, Brad, whenever you have that feeling of, yeah, just even leave that for later, there it is. That means I have to do it because something in the universe is saying, I don't want Brad to be successful because he's going to change other people's lives for the better. Yeah. And that's the reframing for me. It's that message, turn it around and going, no, screw you. I'm doing this because it's coming against me. That's the evidence.
That's such an interesting perspective. I've read a couple of business books myself, but I have not read Outwitting the Devil for some reason. I've read 0 to 1 and all these other that are on the top list of business books to read. But that,
you know what? The fascinating part of this book is that it was written in the early 20th century. The guy who wrote it was too afraid to publish it, and he never did. His great or great grandchildren finally published it on his behalf. He was too afraid of the backlash that it would cause back then. So that's actually what got me curious as to what's in this book that he was too afraid. But what is fascinating about it is what he talks about in back there in the early 20th century is actually relevant for today. Like it's so shocking, for instance, in terms of, yeah, I just want people to be smoking and just relax and not doing anything. I'm like, oh my God, it's no different than over 100 years ago. So.
yes. No, I see your point entirely. I wanted to talk about how musicians are usually considered the dreamers of society. I feel so we've been discussing this all throughout our conference call or this podcast. How do you bring those dreams to fruition? How to get your music out there? And what has to do with failure? How do you overcome failure? How do you build from zero and build a community, build an audience?
I think, first of all, like in terms of using that word failure, I never see failure. I see you have paid for a lesson. Maybe you've paid with time, maybe you've paid with money, but you've done something and you've learned something. The only thing that you can fail at in your life is if you don't do anything. If you make a choice and it's the wrong one, you learned a lesson and now you're smarter. You make the choice and it turns out great. It's like, great, you were successful. But it's when you don't do anything, that's 100% failure, because there's this way of thinking about life, for instance, that if we are not always shooting upwards and we are coasting along, life will wear us down. So that again is the failure. I'm sorry, you have to get back to your question one more time. I went on a bit of a tangent there.
Yes. So I almost think of failure as exercising a skill, as a mindset.
Right.
I see it as every time you fall down, you learn how to get back up. And the more times you fall, the more you know how to get up, and it becomes a quicker process where you can just fail how they say fail fast and then recover quickly. Would you agree
Yes.
with that, or do you have your own opinion on
Yeah,
that?
100%. I went to the business mentor, and I actually prejudged him when I first saw him. Track suit, big fancy house. I'm like, oh, this rich dude and just doesn't care about the world. Later, I learned that he had donated like $70 million of his own money to create the Edmonton prostate clinic. I went back to him and I said, CJ, I said, you have so much knowledge. Can I buy you coffee? I'll just sit and listen. I won't say a word. I just want to hear your story. And sure enough, he said yes. And so in that meeting with him, he says, Brad, there's only one thing that you can control in your life, and that's your attitude. And he says, what you need to do is first focus on you, just like an airline. You put on your air mask first, then take care of your family. Once you got that, then you can take care of your community and then go take on the world. And that really hit me. And ever since then, this guy, he started on the killing room floor of a slaughterhouse, shoveling guts. That's how he started. He didn't even have his grade 12. And then he went back and got it. And so for him, what was success was waking every day with having the right attitude, going, is this the situation I can control or have influence on? And if it's not, let that go, focus on the things I can do here with me and have a positive attitude. And again, that sounds a bit cliche, but really it is the only thing that you control because we don't know what's going to happen every day.
Yes. We tend to blame other people all the time for our failures. And it's just taking responsibility, acknowledging that maybe it is your actions, your mindset, your attitude that is contributing to what you don't exactly love in your life. You are the outcome of what you put out into the world, right? The results you're getting are a reflection of the person you are.
Yes. My psychologist told me early on when I first met her, if Freud had realized in his day how powerful shame is in our society, psychology would be a different beast. And the psychologists are picking up on that now. And it's how we all carry this, and the musicians especially, going, I might put my music out there and people don't like it. And so I'm going to feel what? Shame. And so for a musician to get over that, to realize what that shame, where it comes from so that they can deal with it, so that they can be joyous and go, I'm so excited to put it out there. It's not about how many likes I get or whatever. And you're just putting that joy of putting those tunes up over and over and over again. And all of a sudden they're free of that. And to me, isn't that the win? Isn't that the like more than getting likes or becoming famous or making tons of money? Is you're just fully you and present in the world. The after effects could be fame, could be lots of money, could be connecting with other producers. And I guarantee you, those things generally do happen that way.
Yes. So with artists, usually I say start with your why. Why are you creating music? What is your mission? Would you say that artists should definitely focus on that? Can it be intrinsically rewarding for you instead of waiting on the outcomes of your music, as you were saying, the after product?
Yet, I said to my friend Mitch in Edmonton, he is one of the artists that I told him I can hear your soul when he plays it. I asked him the question once. I said, I don't want an answer, but I want you to imagine this scenario in your head that you're standing before your creator. And it doesn't matter if you're atheist or whatever. Just imagine there's a God, all powerful God, and you're the only one standing before him, and you get to ask him for whatever you want. Now, the thing is, because this is your creator, he's going to know if you're BSing, and he's going to know your true intent. And he will give you exactly whatever you want. Now, what is it that you want? And ask that question, do that exercise. And Mitch said that actually brought him to tears, because I said, Mitch, if you really want this life of your music being out there and all of that, I said, you need to imagine that your whole life is going to change. Everything you'll leave behind, everything will be new, everything will be scary. Are you ready to say that to your creator? What is your why? And I think a lot of people are not in a position to actually know themselves well enough and to be honest enough with themselves to face that scenario in their mind with their creator going, God, this is what I want. Scary.
Yes, no, that is a heartwarming story you just brought up there. I want to wrap up now. Can I ask, is there any chance or any place that our podcast listeners could find your music, find your work? And do you want to share any of your social media channels?
Yeah, they can find me here on Instagram if they want. I'm just building that. But you know what? If this resonated with you today, this is my vulnerability. Reach out to me, send me an email. I'm more than willing to help anybody. I love seeing people succeed. And so, yeah, if you want to put my email in the podcast, for sure, you can look me up on YouTube. You might find some videos of my kids there, though, but me doing a bit of music. And if you're on Instagram, it's going to be more music than anything. But my why in life is not just about me. It's actually about others. And because I love seeing other people succeed. And if you need it, I will be your greatest cheerleader, but be careful because I will also be very honest at the same time. So if you're willing, I'm in.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you listeners for listening to this podcast episode. If you do like this podcast and you want more episodes, then please share it, and that would help us to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hear the stories they all say. Left the kids and went away. Trauma, disaster.